Okay. So because of technical issues, we couldn't talk before, and Leo is not here for very interesting reasons. I propose I read now his presentation, and then later, as the individual opening statement, I will read his statement, okay? So this is what I had. So give me a second to open the website, the page. So Leo is 67, retired biology teacher living in the Netherlands. He's been involved with permaculture with 2006 in Denmark and Western Australia, and joined the European Permaculture Teachers Partnership from 2011 to 2013, where he was responsible for online collaborations and public program with Martin Czerny and others. Now he's running a rewilding project that attracts a steady stream of international design students and alumni from the Design Academy Eindhoven. This has evolved into his chosen family, and they stay in touch a lot, so there's a nice community going on there. He proposes to distinguish the digital technology, the internet, which is an infrastructure and a tool set for collaboration, for sharing information and technical resources, from the digital convenience platforms and tool set for hoarding wealth and attention at scale, which means making profit. Internet was originally designed and structured to facilitate collaboration and sharing. It is when corporations, which are designed and structured to scale profit, hijack these collaborative structures, that the collaborative technology was derailed onto its current path of convenience. Consider digital convenience technology as an analog to extractive and destructive technologies, like chemical pesticides, synthesis fertilizers, and GM seeds, mechanization of agriculture, and as oil delivery systems. Over the past decades, a critical battlefield has been petro-agri-pharma. Some battles have been won, barely and often coincidentally. It would be naive to believe that industry has changed its intentions or structures. The marketing has evolved. The next big battle for this decade is between industrial convenience and human capability for relational collaboration. Do we submit to AI categorization and industrial scale and strange device manipulation of our attention, or do we adopt underlying public digital toolset for human connection at chosen community scale to share our stories? So this is Leo's presentation. Why he's not here will come next, because it has to do with the issue of with the issues talked about here. So who's going first? You will have 5 minutes for your individual opening statements. Who is the first one to get up onto the stage?
I have actually prepared a presentation, and I think I can do it in 5 minutes.
Okay, here you go.
Okay, so what I need is to share my screen, actually. So I have to check where my presentation is. And see if we can get shared. Can you see that, everyone? Okay.
Yep.
Cool. So what we call digital permaculture will be extending the edge of permaculture, and the edge is usually where the things are growing. That's where the forest is growing in dimension, in width, diameter. As permaculture designers, we always start our designs with there's a way. So, and this is a very simple one. We use digital tools on a daily basis, especially our computers, smartphones, but also cameras and whatever is there. And we also use the software part of it. So we browse websites and we use cloud computing also on a daily basis. And often we even don't know that it's cloud computing. But yet, we haven't yet applied permaculture ethics and principles to the digital realm. So it's time to start that. we use Google Drive, Google Mail, Google Analytics, so a lot of Google. We use different social media platforms, or in general, the big five. So it's Mama, Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, Alphabet, and Apple. To give you a little bit of an idea of the size of these companies, so the numbers are in $1 billion of assets. So with Apple being one of the, or the most valued company in the world. And then followed by the other tech giants, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon. And then in the lower row, Tesla, of course, then Berkshire Hathaway, the investment company, NVIDIA, which is heavily now profiting from AI. Meta, Facebook, of course, TSMC, that's the Taiwan semiconductor manufacturer. So they are actually the ones that also produce the hardware for the others. And then United Health. This is like a use case from a permaculture association. So I just picked one and checked what they are doing. And they are heavily using Google. They rely on the Google Cloud immensely, from the Google Drive, from the Google Docs, the participation that it allows, the Google Form, Google Analytics, whatever Google. And then, of course, the different social media platforms and Zoom, Slack, and WordPress. So where WordPress is probably the only one that's open source here. What we are doing as permaculture is we actually we support these digital monoculture. So why? The why is not really in an order here. So it's just points so that I think that why this is happening. It's because usually we don't have the knowledge for all this stuff. It's often not seen as per se permaculture because often our knowledge about permaculture ends at our garden gate. In communities, it's false leadership. We have then people that know WordPress or know the Google Drive, and they just keep on going. We have not enough professionals that know enough about that stuff. And as Leo pointed out, it's convenience. Yeah, totally. Our prime directive is very clear. The only ethical choice is to take responsibility for oneself and our children. And for me, this means that permaculture design starts at our door outwards. So first, of course, with ourselves, the zone 0, but then outwards. So we probably don't start with our zone 4. So it's personal in the beginning. And the ethics in digital permaculture are the same, and they all apply as it would be normal permaculture in the garden or in a social design. And it's, of course, the same with the principles, but for the principles, I guess that there will be new ones, principles that are explicitly crafted for the digital realm.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm done. I'm not done, not completely, but I can stop if it's
I can give you a minute more if you want.
Okay, then just fast. We need to get away from our digital monoculture. That's the thing that we have to do. So we need to design. We must come up with permaculture design that addresses the issues. So what we always do in our designs, we follow the process. Small example, email. The permaculture community, when I pull numbers from different associations, we have a very high amount of Gmail addresses, but there are so many alternatives around that we could use. So the tools are out there. We are just not that aware of them. So we need to raise awareness. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So Douglas or Aimee, you're up.
Do you want to go next, Douglas?
You may go, Aimee. It's fine with me.
Okay. I haven't really prepared any presentation, but I want to talk through some few elements, also drawing from what Dominik has presented, which I think would be really useful. So obviously, as permaculturists, we always want to do the best thing possible, right? We have good intentions, we really want to do this, and then we are affronted with the real life. So in the context of the work that the International Permaculture Collab is doing within the Digital Circle, is trying to bridge the divide between real life and what's available more ethically, and how do we access these things. So for example, in the use case for associations or community groups, there's different approaches that one could take. So we take into account what sort of budget does the association have, and who within that organization can support the transition. So it's not only about giving a tool, but also, okay, what is the capacity here to be able to birth this change, right? So it's always a little bit slow. Maybe something doesn't work quite as well as you expected, or you are not familiar with all the features. One big Google Drive alternative is Nextcloud. And this for self-hosting for an individual is difficult, but actually for self-hosting for associations is great. And associations and groups and communities consume a large amount of data and data hosting. Nextcloud can do all of this for them, and it's an excellent alternative. So something that may seem impossible, to transition away from Google Drive is actually not that difficult, and also not that costly. So there's different price ranges depending on how big the organization is. Another aspect of this is also that we are self-conscious about the choices that we make. So even within the collab itself, that we are still using Slack, for example, where there are open source alternatives available. So we are self-conscious of that. No, we are still not perfect yet, and everything and everybody is on a journey into this. So it's not about shaming. It's not about, oh, you're doing something wrong here, you need to fix it. It's acknowledging that we could all do better. And I think this sort of attitude towards digital permaculture is very important, because this is something that is steeped into our daily use. Like email is a daily use thing. If you're a permaculture teacher, you're dealing with maybe trying to find a web hosting that's ethical, maybe trying to find the email client that's a bit easy to use and that you can get all those students registered and so on. And I think one of these tools that we are using today, Zoom, right? So one of these tools, for example, Zoom, there are alternatives to Zoom, but how easy are they to set up? Who is self-hosting them? It's a little bit hit and miss with larger groups. They're getting better and better, the open source alternatives. So this is something that it's still a work in progress. I think just like when we started, maybe in the beginning, when people were talking about starting landscape design with permaculture ethics, this is now the start of permaculture in the digital perspective. So we're pioneers a little bit, right? So we're dancing to the tune of something new. We're experimenting, exploring, and I think I can tell you there's a lot of permaculture grassroots projects who come to the Digital Circle and we solve their issues. So people who have very limited budgets can still have access to open source tools.
Any last words you want to say?
I think that's it for the moment.
Okay, good. Then Douglas, it's your turn.
Great, thank you. So I think that culture is a way that we share knowledge and learning, and we communicate, and we make decisions, and we design together. These are all aspects of, these are cultural interactions. And the digital realm is a way that a lot of communication, collaboration, and design occurs these days. And it's always important when we are making our designs to think of a couple basic ethical values. Inclusion is one, so we make sure that all the so-called stakeholders or participants or people who are affected by decisions are involved in the conversation and in the design process. So I'm talking about here permacultural design justice. So bringing the principles of design justice into the permacultural realm. And then there's the inclusion and distribution questions, because it's important to consider that for many of us, the subsidized versions of these technologies, so the versions of these technologies that are somehow provided for seemingly free by these dominant extractive digital platforms, for many, many people around the world, these are the ways of collaborating and communicating with each other. So whereas we are used to, in a Western European, highly consumeristic culture, for the freedom of choice and the ability to say, well, I can choose between if I'm going to buy from the local co-op, or I can produce my own food, or I can go to the supermarket today, or I can go to a fine restaurant. These consumption choices and the vast menu of choices being available is very much something that's exclusively available to a very limited segment of the population, even in Europe. And here's a great example. My beautiful dog, Nala, and this home that we live in. We found these places quite accidentally through the use of Facebook. Totally unintentionally, Facebook kept serving the advertisement for our beautiful 100-something-year-old decommissioned schoolhouse out in the Finnish countryside. It kept being Mark Zuckerberg, the evil Mark Zuckerberg algorithm kept sending this ad to my wife. And lo and behold, it allowed us a footstep into participating in regenerative agriculture in a way that wasn't even an option. It was new information that was made available to us through these extractive, horrible platforms. And believe me, I don't like Mark Zuckerberg, and it really is a total difficult choice for me to imagine who I think if they're in the hopefully eventual cage match between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, I hope they both beat the heck out of each other and end up incapacitated. They have to give over control of their evil empires to the masses, or to the, a buyout by the workers of their organizations. But I have to say, this tool, and I came from the United States, I see the effect that that disinformation has on, for example, political campaigns, and how bad actors have used these information platforms to turn communities against one another. So what I'm going to suggest is that we, as community designers, digital permaculture enthusiasts, we need to be looking at how to include more people, how to reach people where we're at, how to not hoard our own knowledge about best practices, but to share and communicate in dialogue amongst ourselves and with an inclusive perspective to the others we bring into the community, so we can begin to really thoughtfully co-design and co-create our communities, taking advantage of these tools and using them to their best possible practical purposes. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. Very well on time. So I will take a moment now. I will please say, I noted it before, my reading is not the best, because we have, in theory, there's a fourth panelist who chose not to be here. Yes? And he made this public this morning with a very nice writing, and I will just read what he wrote as his introduction statement, and then you can jump off that. Yes. And then this is so the adventure of digital permaculture starts here. Clicking the provided Zoom link to the conference session, I actually ended up here. To use Zoom, you need to agree to the terms of service and privacy policy. And then there's those buttons of I agree and disagree. It took me a while to read through the terms of service and the privacy policy. They are attached. The first terms of use is a rather one-sided agreement where the platform operator claims exclusive ownership of its own stuff. Fair enough. And magnanimously grants me the use of it. So they can gather all sorts of information on me, which would be my property, while I am obliged to waive my property rights and any rights to sue for any reason. The second, privacy policy, describes in more detail what private data they collect and eventually transfer and store in the USA. In other words, specifying how my right to privacy will be violated, they make claims on respecting the EU data privacy law. But considering the properties of this digital medium, with its inherent lack of transparency beyond the interfaces in front of you, verification is categorically impossible. Moreover, when investigated by more or less independent researchers, it turns out again and again that companies taking ownership if user-generated data is systematically abused as a critical ingredient of their business model. Data is also systematically bleeding into unforeseen processes run by other companies, governments, and other uninvited agents. This does not fill me with confidence. What it does do is confirm the dire need of permaculture practitioners, designers, and teachers to take the digital realm as serious as the physical and organic landscapes around them. They must be as critical of commercial platforms that are built on the public open standards and open source design principles, funded by public money, as they are of, say, the petro-agri-pharma industry and repressive government agencies. Convenience is the key here. While the internet and ICT infrastructure in general provides the tools that we can use to effect real and useful services in our lives and that of our communities, they are being hijacked by third parties that are only interested in furthering their own agendas of accumulating wealth in terms of money, influence, and attention, and increasingly in manipulating our individual behavior for their own benefit at any cost. That cost is externalized to us, the users. There's a cute euphemism, and to the environment with radical content. You will understand that given the subject and content of this particular PermaPuhee session, the only choice is to take personal responsibility and not use Zoom as a communication channel. Please consider this email as my contribution to the event. So, knowing that my reading was maybe a little difficult to hear, I will just ask if you understood everything well. Or if, yes, okay, so no clarifications needed. Yes, Douglas?
Do we feel comfortable copy and pasting the text into the chat for our participants who might find that an easier way to consume that information? If we're feeling comfortable sharing his Leo's private property, which he has shared through communication channels, which have cascaded down through the evil servers of Google, so which have already entered into the Google realm on some level. Dominik will probably correct me that it in transit has been encrypted, but certainly I just think if we can, maybe we should copy paste it into the chat, and now it'll be on the evil Zoom's servers as well.
A lot of things to unpack here. So we just first question, can I share it in the chat? Dominik, what do you think?
I think you can, just not his personal statement. All what he has written about the actual problem with the privacy regarding Zoom, that's fine, but his personal statement, I think, is not.
Yes, so with radical, yes, about the convenience is the key here and all this stuff, yes?
Yeah, yes, right.
From the terms of use to, okay, so we'll share it here.
So Leo has raised some absolutely fundamental, critical issues that are near and dear to my heart.
So you open the dialogue, you have 40 minutes, okay?
Great.
I will copy and paste this piece. And no, I will put you up first and then I will copy and paste. You can start.
Leo has raised some fundamentally important and critical issues about information, sovereignty, privacy, property rights and things like this. These are so critical and fundamental to my personal values. I first learned of these issues on reading a book about the National Security Agency, which is the United States' major surveillance apparatus. When the book was called The Puzzle Palace by James Bamford, and he talked about the incoming conversion from analog phone systems to the digital encoded telecommunications. At that point, the new threat was that there was 2 giant towers or something. I'm sorry, I'm not terribly technologically adept, but on the East Coast and the West Coast on the United States. And they were going to be able to beam a lot of telephone traffic digitally through these 2 antenna. And by virtue of that, they were going to be able to suck up that data really easily. Absolutely terrified. 1985, 6, 7 or something is when we were reading this. And we were terrified. And this was before the internet was a thing. So I do believe this is really critically important. But the thing that has changed, which Leo also raised since then, is that now this flow of digital information is the threat is less and less from government actors than it is from these private actors. We have extra-governmental, international, multinational, transnational corporations who are dominating the control and flow of this information and manipulating the flow of information without the interests of the community taken into account. Any community interests are done on a purely voluntary ad hoc basis, and these corporations leverage regulatory environments. They do regulatory arbitrage by moving their domicile from place to place where their profit interest can escape the public interest of control over or regulation of how they manipulate the information flow. But I will say this from a critical perspective really quickly, is that until that data that was created and captured within the platform, the value of that data that they captured is actually critical. User data is something critical that we need to capture. As digicultural designers, we want to capture that sort of data. And on the data captured by the interaction between people like Leo and myself with these platforms is not even ours. That data, sure, the information that we share, the content we create, we could make a property claim for that. But the data that he's concerned about being shared there is also this usage data that didn't even become of value or wasn't even a thing until those platforms built the apparatus to create it, collect it, store it, and analyze it and use it.
Okay, a lot to unpack. Aimee, Dominik?
Yeah, a lot to say here. I would say, yes, all of this is true and valid, and we should absolutely consider it. When we are making the choice for our own infrastructure, let's say, if we pick a website and we want to see how many people are clicking on this or going on that page and so on, this is all possible to do with plugins that anonymize the data. So that's, one aspect that maybe people are not aware of. We don't need to use Google Analytics. Google Analytics is not anonymized. We can use others, Matomo, for example, which is a WordPress plugin that anonymizes the data and still gives you the information. So I think it's a choice that these companies are making. They are collecting user data, which is not anonymized. I wrote an article last year. I'll link it into the chat later. It's called Data Privacy as an Act of Love. There is no love in these companies for the users. They want to serve the user in a way that is for them self-service, to see exactly what you're buying, what you're looking into. The danger is that not anonymized data comes back to bite you, because it basically tells everyone about you, everything you do. If you don't use a browser add-on, for example, then every website tracks you. They can see by picking data from Facebook, from Google, if you use Google as your search engine or any Google products, they scan your emails, they build a very accurate picture of you, so accurate that election results can be predicted from that user data, and it was used for this reason specifically. So it may be because we are working in, let's say, more social areas. If you are helping refugees, if you are an activist, you are putting yourself in danger when you don't obfuscate your data because you are being tracked, essentially. And that's the position of your phone, the websites. And this is not to scare you, it is just a statement of fact, really. But yes, there are tools out there that help mitigate some of this. So it's important also to focus on the solution, not only how terrible the word is, but like everything else, no, there's at least some solutions to it. I must say that the companies are very powerful and mighty. There's a lot of money that goes behind this. And for example, this only today, I was on YouTube, I have an ad blocker. And today it told me I couldn't access content without allowing that to come through. So it has finally, after months of me using this particular plugin, it wasn't realizing before that was blocked. Today it realizes it's blocked. And this is because they have invested money in their website to be able to pick up that there is an ad blocker on it. So yeah, we keep moving and we have to keep evolving and seeing where we go, really. What do you say, Dominik?
Difficult. So first of all, yes, Douglas' statements are all valid. And the example with the Google Analytics, that's also very valid. I remember back, like I think 10 years or so, they still collected also the IP address in full. So not just like the anonymized IP address, the full IP address, which then EU legislation stopped them to do, luckily, but it took them like a year to adapt to that. So Matomo on that part is far better, of course. You still see all the information, technical aspects like browser, how often the user has been there, how often the website got visit. But the data is in your hand. It's when someone browses the permaculture network website or mydominikjais.com or maybe on Buxhorns, the data doesn't leave the server. It stays on the same server and the data is with me. So there is no sharing with third parties. And that's the difference, because with Google, you already shared your users, visitors, data with a third party. Then you have, again, to sign all these kind of privacy policies, which a normal person with no ideas what this is about wouldn't understand, because these are legal binding contracts that are, I don't know how many pages you have to read. That's ridiculous what's in there. and who really takes the time? I was like saying to Lumia, my partner, they read the terms and conditions of Zoom. And I was like, I haven't done that actually, because it's for sure bad. I know that whenever I use these tools, I know that the privacy policies and the terms and conditions will be bad for me and for whoever is using it. So I skipped reading them. I did some. I read Facebook some years ago, and I think I read a German equivalent, but no. So the problem really is we have all these big platforms and they abuse their power and they do everything to get around all that stuff. And they should not be entrusted with that kind of power anymore. They're simply too big. It's like if you would look to Germany and would say, okay, we have these companies, breweries, and they collaborate with each other and say, the price for beer needs to be €1. Then years later, they will have like a lawsuit against them. If the big tech companies does do that, there's nothing. It will never happen. So, Douglas, any thoughts?
Yeah. So Dominik, if I recall correctly, you and I met over Facebook. I don't really remember the specifics, but I'm pretty sure that we met over Facebook. And yeah. I stay in touch with my friend Jennifer Granick, who works for the American Civil Liberties Union and formerly ran the Stanford Internet Security or Privacy Institute. I mean, she's one of the foremost legal representatives of civil liberties. From a technological perspective, she's always speaking at the hacker conventions and things like this. She's represented hackers from the 80s and 90s on, and she and I stay in touch over Facebook. This is a compromise that we make as fully informed as we can be. You mentioned reading the terms and conditions. They also update the terms and conditions all the time. So theoretically, they could update those terms and conditions 100 times a day, and there's no way. We are flooded, in fact, with that legalese information in a way that we don't have the resources to process it.
No,
so it's a rational. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please go on. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
And so, well, that's basically the quick point on that, is that I think that we have to make, and what is the solution to this problem is education, right? Learning and communication and collaboration. So to the question about working with refugees, people with limited access to technology, limited access to bandwidth. As someone who values civil liberties and privacy and things like this, should I say, well, until they get it together and start using what I believe my idiosyncratic choices about what are the most open source or free or digitally pure technologies, should I not talk to them until they get with it and somehow learn that they need to be using more purist technologies that are immune from the taint of hoarding or capitalism? Now, look, I am an anti-capitalist, anarcho-syndicalist person. However, I think we need to make, when we're working within these capitalist structures, we need to understand our relationships with them and not try to pretend that somehow we can remain uncorrupted through interacting with them. The idea is that I think it was Audre Lorde who said you cannot use the master's tools to deconstruct the master's house. Well, I think we have to use the master's tools to deconstruct the master's house. We need to work together, meet people where they're at, and use the communication channels we have, and that, most importantly, that they're using in order to help spread this knowledge, advance the conversation, and start moving it forward so we could create a critical mass of people who are pursuing these alternatives and voting for them.
Aimee, do you want to add? Because I want to add, if I can.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you're right. We met at Facebook, and I don't say everything has to go. That's not, but we need to be more aware. It needs to be awareness-based decision making. So what we kind of have to understand what's happening around us in the context of that. And there is compromise, and I'm with you when it comes to using the tools to destruct the house. So they are there to be used. They need to be consciously used. And we need to be also aware of the alternatives that are available to us, because if everything's nail, we will only have a hammer, or everything will be a hammer. But so there are different tools around that can be used already. And I think they are pretty good, actually. They just need education and people that kind of are educated in that part. And we need to kind of bridge the gap from our community to the hackers community or to the IT community, because there are a lot of very bright people there that can do that for us. But we need to reach out. We cannot be in our own bubble for that. Okay, that's me.
In the last, I think 3 or 4 years, I have seen a shift also in the hacker community. So there's more eco-conscious hackers today than there used to be. I don't know when I started 5 years ago. So it's interesting now. I remember the first conference I went to with our little eco hacker farm stand there. No, people didn't know what we were talking about, but the lectures were very popular. And then the year after, there was a seed exchange. There were people talking about creating food forests, and there was like a metaverse garden, which you could go around. The open source garden project started. So it's a lot of movement very quickly, because obviously we're becoming more and more aware. I think also with the climate changes are starting to impact people's thinking, and the way that, just like Douglas said, you know, the key is education. So we're becoming more and more conscious, and more conscious about these issues. I must say that a lot of projects that approach the International Permaculture Collab for support, that are grassroots projects from Africa, they still have a lot of internet poverty. So access to the internet is still very limited. They don't have access to, let's say, laptops, so maybe they can only have access on their phone. So it becomes very difficult then, because obviously they can't onboard on the platforms we have. So you have to build infrastructure that is inclusive by virtue of making conscious decisions about using not ethical tools for ethical reasons, essentially. Is uber difficult. That's not to say that that can't change in the future. I think it can change in the future as tools become lighter, so they're more able to be more supported on, let's say, Android phones, and that we have more app versions of what we have desktop only. And in terms of it making, you know, educating, not only educating the project people or the grassroots projects or the people who support them, but also for us, the people who are there, who are already with this thinking, to participate and contribute to projects like the Freedom Software Foundation of Europe, who helps to legislate these rules for these companies who we have to use, we have to market, we have to be on Facebook, we have to be on Instagram, and we have to be everywhere, because that's the noise that people are hearing. This is where the platform is, if you want to be seen and so on. But yes, we can influence these platforms by helping to legislate them. And we do this by being present in those forums.
One of the basic tools Dominik taught me about as a permaculture practitioner is the soil squeeze test. And when we do the soil squeeze test, we get our hands dirty. Now, dirty in this context, what does that mean? Well, you get dirt and mud on your hand. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And if you're as into it as Dominik is, you may even taste the soil too and put it into your mouth as well. So the soil and the dirt is interacting with your body through this mucous membrane. All this stuff is coming in and out. None of us has a impenetrable boundary or barrier around us. On a fundamental level, we are open systems interacting. So it's just, I think that's something to keep in mind, that it's not necessarily harmful to you to get your hands a little dirty when doing this work.
Yes, definitely, totally agree. And it's not simple as we define what the tools will be. So it's kind of an on-the-go thingy, and not that simple. Not that simple yet. But yeah, the soil test. Nice one.
Aimee, you want to say something? If not,
no, I think nothing to add, but I would be happy to hear maybe if there's questions from the audience, if they want to put them in the chat, would be good.
Yes, we can put them in. I also wanted to add another layer of question about it, because you have been talking about the issue of education, awareness of inclusivity. And in my experience as teaching and working with a lot of people who are not technological apt and always trying to use alternative structures, I met a lot of people when I tell them, okay, we don't use Google Drive, we use CryptPad, they just go like, what? And I gave up on it. I don't know if you want to reflect a bit on this issue. I wanted to bring it in. And
Yeah.
Well-
Oh, Douglas, please.
Yeah, and I hear I'm going to personally attack Dominik, who is my mentor and my teacher, and who taught me everything I know about permaculture in a practical sense I learned at Dominik's knee. However, I curse his name every time I have to open up the manuscript for his digital permaculture text, which he shared with me in advance, because I have to go in again and figure out, okay, what is this encryption thing? Where did I put the key? You know, and the fact is, Dominik doesn't want to hoard this information and keep it out there. If anything, he wants everybody to know and learn from this information. So I have to, the principle that I'm introducing here is kind of like a zoning principle, but with the digital realm, because I think the digital realm disrupts our sense of zones as permacultural designer. What is zone 0? You know, what does now digital connectivity and the internet do to our context of, oh, this is where we start, this is here, this is further, further, further away. There's many ways to look at that. You know, on my horrible iPhone, you know, which app icon do I put on the home page, or which do I put on zone 2, another page hidden behind? You know, these are all aspects, these are questions. Yes, convenience is, you know, you can come at it from a moralistic perspective and say the hard way is always the good way. But from a permaculture design perspective, we're supposed to figure out ways to work with these systems that they're out there in ways that are most efficacious for addressing these huge social issues that we're trying to address, which back in the 70s was peak oil, right? And, you know, the founding Bible writers of permaculture reacting to, you know, the energy crisis of the early 70s, the ecological awareness that exploded with Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. You know, it's, I don't know, I lost my train of thought, but I think I don't know. I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought there. I just get so excited about this stuff. Oh, the zoning thing,
Yeah,
the zoning thing, right? I think that this brings in new opportunities for us to think about a transformative approach to political economy. That's not just about establishing these little beachheads of homesteads here and there, but where we can actively share information, perspectives on a much broader level than was ever imaginable in the 70s. And we now can connect and share some of these principles, right? And evolve the principles in interaction with all sorts of different local contexts around the world. Did I send my balloons up? Yes, balloons for me. I did do it on purpose, but I don't know how it happened. But yeah, zones I think the question of zones is fundamentally disrupted by the advent of and affordances of the digital realm.
Yeah, totally. Everything collapses on zone 0. It's like you have an ultimate zone 0 and nothing else anymore.
I think to answer Katie's question, because I'm in that space, I am always trying to sell this stuff, alternative things, and the way that I find the most effective is to appeal to the human curiosity. So, oh, you haven't tried this before? Would you like to try this? If you don't like it, we change it. So, you know, it's a sort of experimental, playful way of doing it. So that's one thing. And then the other is to maybe create a space where all the links live, like a dashboard. You know, this whole proximity and zoning, it really helps when it's in one space. I can see all these other things, whereas if I have to remember, oh, this is that, if I have to remember, that's extra hassle. No, I think this is one thing that the let's say Google Drive does very well, but other platforms don't do as well. So when creating like one point where everything goes, that's really already very good. That's my advice. I hope it helps.
And if I could put a shout out for Zotero, which is a citations manager, but it's a great way to organize digital libraries. And the great thing about it is that you can put a text or a referent into multiple different libraries. So it's not just a single hierarchy and one thing has to go in one place and one place only. It's now this, what is the word? It's more like a graph database than the other kind of database, the bad kind of database. So it's a great way to share information, and we can share our libraries there. As part of the COVID response, having moved many times over the years from the East Coast of the US to Hawaii, and now here to Finland, my materialized library is lost. It's gone. My books didn't come with me. So during COVID, I rebuilt my digital library, and now I'm proud to say I have a 30,000 volume digital library, all organized in Zotero by author, by topic, by who was citing who, many different ways, many different references. And it's an amazing resource. And if anybody would like to collaborate and share Zotero, access to Zotero libraries, I'm open to share.
What I thought is a wiki. Like that's one of the most successful open source software projects in the world is the Wikipedia. And it's not just the software, it's of course the people contributing to it, writing articles in I don't know how many languages are there, but it's huge. In 2004, I think I could still download the whole English Wikipedia. It was fitting on a DVD, so 3.4 gigabytes, something like that. Now it's not possible anymore. 2023, it's like, I don't know, 100-folded. You can only download sections of it. So the amount it has grown over the years, amazing. But there is a software behind it, so the Wikimedia. And I would use that for knowledge sharing. It can be used for all kinds of knowledge sharing. And it doesn't need to be the Wikipedia website. You can install the software and then use that too. And I think there are actually a lot of wikis around. There is the Appropedia, that's the Wikipedia for appropriate tools that are used in permaculture. So it's out there already and it's used. Yeah.
Okay. We're a bit ahead of time. I think the dialogue, the opening dialogue has calmed down, so I will just do a short summary as far as I was able to get to it with all those ideas floating around. If I forget something important, please add it. And then we will open up for questions. We already have one in the chat, and I would also invite people to add to it. You know, you can also talk. Just raise your hand and I can take you up also. So you can just also be visible. Reminding everybody that if you talk, you're going to be recorded. And I think this is going to be published. So you're giving away your property of ownership of data. Yes. So there was like, there's, when talking about the issue, there was always a play between the big structures and the alternatives, yes. And with the big structures, we have to see that they have a lot of power, which in the beginning it was more. Yes, Dominik, you wanted to say something?
I probably like to add something here because we were talking about big structures and small structures. At the end, those guys are using the same open source software and not contributing back to it. So just because we are browsing Facebook and saying, whoa, what a nice thingy, at the end, this is running on Linux. So 99% of the websites we are browsing is Linux. It's open source. We just don't see it.
Okay, this is an interesting piece of information. So the open source is below the inclusive of the big structures. But with the big structures, the thing is that they have a lot of power. They're nowadays mainly companies, that governments are secondary to it. That's something that was before the scary structure was the government. And they give us an overload of legal terms and things we cannot understand. We have no interest to understand, no capacity to follow up on. And they work a lot on, their main aim is to gain money, and they work a lot on trying to get our data, because this is where they make the money, and they really extract the data in the data storage to get their business model working. And so there is, with this tracking that is being done and trying to optimize for selling and for their users, they invade our privacy and can do profiles, very detailed profiles for automatized processes. So there's a huge question of ownership around this, of ownership of data, of ownership of information, and who's. And they are trying to take away what is ours, yes? And then there's the alternative tools, where there have been a lot of, lot named, or some, there are a lot of more, like the Matomo was named, Nextcloud was named, and some others. And they have, yeah. Sorry, my son is interrupting. We're alone at home, and I just, yes, trying to get him out of internet. So tracking internet time. So we have, in the alternative tools, there's a lot of possibilities and tools we can use for different purposes, but they're not being used. They're not being used as much as we would like to. And then there's the question of inclusivity. This means how much of this can be approached. Yes, can be, how many people can access to it because of their internet capacity, of their knowledge, of the money they have directly to buy the infrastructure necessary to access to those tools. And then there's a big problem around how to get users into the tools. And the reality is that now the big companies have monopolized the markets. So we're working a lot within a compromise of trying to educate and of doing what we do, using both platforms, being on the big platforms like Facebook, Instagram, Google, because we need to use them to reach out to the people, and we use them sometimes also out of not thinking about it. And there's a big need of educating and awareness to make people prepare people to use more alternative tools. Yes. And then there's this zoning topic, like how do we use permaculture tools, diversity zones, in a way that helps us handle better the online world. I hope this was a good synthesis. And then I will get down to the questions. At this point, we have one question, and I will, I don't know if you want to add something to this, or if not, I get down to the first question. Yes, we have one here, which is in the chat. And if somebody else wants to ask a question or wants to comment something or add some reflections, you can just raise your hand or add it to the chat, and I will be tracking it, okay? So the first question comes from Jan, or Jan, or I don't know how to pronounce it.
Janne.
Janne. I'm sorry here. Yes. Don't even know which country you're from, so no way to figure out the language. So the question is, what other permaculture principles work in the context of the digital world?
Nearly all of them, I think. Produce no waste comes to mind. So, you know, don't store data you don't need, because it's just, it takes energy to store data and to run it. So if you can store stuff locally on your computer instead of on the cloud, that's good. Apply self-regulation and accept feedback, so you can see exactly how people are responding to what you're creating, or how much needs to run. And I think you can always check these things or ask people if you don't know. Yeah, a lot of this. What were you going to say, Douglas? I think I interrupted you.
Oh, no, not at all. One of the important ones that I had to track down, trying to get my own thoughts together for this talk today, was Kenneth E.F. Watt's principle of thermodynamics, energy systems converge. It was totally butchered by Mollison. The reference to him, it's not even in, like, it says Watt. Now, there are two great ecological thinkers called Watt, so it took me a long time to track this down. But it's Kenneth E.F. Watt who came up with this systems view of ecology. And that's the thing in permaculture we talk about maximizing stored energy locally, which kind of goes to that data question. But interestingly enough, Watt talks about information as a resource. And the information that's often referred to in the ecological systems perspective is biomass and biodiversity as information. So in this sense, the whole basis of the energy management in permaculture is about maximizing local information storage and mass on the local homestead. And I think this is something that we really need to rethink in the context of information technology. I think that the relationship between energy and information, such a deep question, and really needs to be considered. And as confessed with my 30,000 stored digital files, obviously I'm on the side of storing information and making it accessible for me, because I don't know, yes, when those cloud platforms are going to go off. I don't know right now which of these texts I want to have access to. The great semiologist Umberto Eco talks about libraries and talks about how terrible it would be if we only got one book at a time, we read that book and we got rid of it. He believes that we should have these giant libraries and have that information available and be able to cite from many different sources and bounce things off of each other. And it's all those relationships and connections between the different things out of there that create exponentially larger masses of biomasses of information, biodiversity, and knowledge.
This is where your graph database comes into play. You need that actually for doing that.
Okay. Any other questions, comments?
Maybe could someone else explain the energy, the thermodynamic principle of permaculture for anybody who, if people have questions about that, because I know even I'm a little unclear about that. Dominik, my teacher, can you quickly talk about that storage of energy principle of the permaculture principle, or no?
You mean
something about?
You mean Holmgren's principles of, or do you mean?
Yes, Holmgren derived from Watt. Yes.
Collect and store energy.
I don't want to put you on the spot. You don't have to.
If you transfer it into the digital realm, you're already said correctly that data stored is energy, and it's energy on the system itself. Like the computer needs energy to actually write the bits onto whatever it's stored at. But what we are also storing is the energy of the person that has kind of contributed to what we are storing, to the data itself. So we are storing two layers here, and probably even more if there are comments or crosslinks or whatever. So storage itself doesn't cost a thing, actually. Storage is kind of cheap once it is stored, because you don't need energy to actually have the storage run. You see, but once it is on a hard drive, it's stored there. You need the energy again when you retrieve it. You can just put a USB stick somewhere with the data on it, but the USB stick itself doesn't need energy. Only when you access it, when you write or read. So I would say that the principle applies very well. So you catch and store energy. That's what you're doing when you have your citation software, and creating these libraries, all the cross references. That's what I am doing when I write a personal wiki with all the information in there. But yeah, it comes with a price. It comes with the price of retrieval that we don't have when we have it stored on paper. but it's probably far more difficult to kind of have all these cross-reference easily going with paper. I mean, there's a German guy, and he came up with a very interesting system that I still don't understand how he does that, where he has all the cross-references within his documents. It's like a set of cards where he can go through very fast. So to come back, I think all the principles are applicable. They work pretty well in the digital space. You just put your head around it, how you can use them, how they apply. It's not that they can't be applied, they always can.
Okay, I'm not sure if it's 2 or 3 more questions. I will start reading one. It's Lumia, and she wrote several things. So let's see if we have to split it or if it goes in one. Another question: how do you or how would you advise people to balance the social, personal, and social cultural and the ecological considerations when choosing on how to participate in the digital world? Data privacy, inclusivity, overconsumption of energy. What is the most important? What should be? Or do they need to go hand in hand like the ethics?
I think it's deeply personal. I remember when I became at one point I had like internet fatigue, where I was too much. I work on the laptop all the time, then I socialize on it, I watch videos online, so all my days basically spent looking at the screen unless I'm eating or sleeping. And I became very tired, and then after a while I was like, okay, then my free time I need to apportion it so that I don't spend the time on my screen. And then what happens is you pick up the phone, right? if you're not on the laptop, you pick up the phone. And this is compounded when, for example, you live away from your family. So I live away from my family. So in order to communicate with my friends or my family who live far away, I need to pick up the device and do. I would say for me, the important thing was that I make the time that I spend there useful and valuable. So for example, scrolling for me is not valuable, right? If I think about Katie, for example, and I want to see what Katie is up to, I make an effort to connect with Katie. Okay, I could use Facebook, but it's not that I'm spending 300 hours on Facebook scrolling what Katie is doing. I make the connection. I drop her a message. I think this is quality over quantity, and it's a losing battle with Facebook. I'm using it as an example because it's very addictive, and the behaviors are there, the features are there, tailored already to how the mind works. I am not unique in the way I'm addicted to it. We are addicted to it because it's very well designed to make it so.
In fact, it's called addictive design.
Yeah.
For a reason.
So being conscious and making the conscious effort of behaving in the way that honors what I value is an effort that I have to do. And if I cannot do that, then I abstain from it for 1 or 2 days until I can again.
Okay.
And onto that,
I have you, okay?
sorry. Onto that, the question of the addictive design, in a way, it's about using behaviorist principles to engage people and keep them learning from your platform. And in fact, as digital permacultural designers, we have to acknowledge that there are a bunch of people out there who have been primed to respond to these sort of things. So working with humans as they are, we have to understand the behavior. We have to understand the social and political context within their working, and we have to figure out how to ethically use our behavioral management or design principles to keep them engaged and communicating on our platform so that we can start sharing and communicating about this information. So in a way, we have to figure out a way to ethically engage in these inherently manipulative behavior control tools. It's not an answer just to say I won't touch anything that that interacts with the human reward system. You have to figure out, okay, what's an ethical way to work interact with humans' behavioral reward systems in a way that's not harming them and that's not manipulating them for evil purposes.
I put a link in the chat. You might want to check it out. It, of course, goes to YouTube. It's about the dilemma of AI. So it's pretty good, explains why those platforms are so addictive. They have enough points of your personality, so they can kind of, AI can create something for you. You get housed in a bubble. It's yeah, pretty crazy tool, actually.
Okay. So I have more questions if you don't have anything about this. I have a question by Jenny in the chat. Then I will take up Celia. Then I will read the second question of Lumia and the second question of Janne. Okay. So everybody is. So here is a question for the first question from Janne, which is, do you have something insight about the shitification of Google and Facebook?
Well, I don't know if that means what you think it means. In the permaculture world, shitification is a good thing. Manure is a lovely, wonderful, awesome thing. So I think from a digital perspective and a permacultural perspective, we're going to need to address Janne's metaphor here. And let's talk about it like the e-wasteland of Facebook or something like that.
I mean, the insight, I don't know what insight might people have, but everyone is a creator now. And the more content we create, the first of all, the more diversity you're gonna get. So the diversity of content has greatly increased from the birth of the internet, let's say. But also that nowadays we have this kind of reward system, right? So if I like a content, I like it or heart it or share it or whatever, and the algorithm promotes this, and now content creators are being paid to basically create more content that people like. So what you are labeling as shitification is things that people like. So it is interesting to see, maybe to also examine this, like what are people liking, why are they liking it, because it might give us some insight into the human mind and also the human culture as a whole. And in our own behavior, then, so going back to how we behave, we can like and share the content that is, let's say, we value more, to reverse this or to balance it. So, but yes, it's an algorithm issue, but it's fed by people's behavior. It's not sitting outside of us. The collective, we are doing this.
I have to be dumped now. What does the term actually really mean? Because I have like
shitification.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I took it to mean the lessening of the quality of the content.
Okay, I got that. So like your search results get worse and worse and worse over time, or yeah.
That maybe there are more videos of dogs and cats dancing, or people endangering themselves, or
yeah. I second you,
like
Aimee. We're all creators, so we put content out.
Here is an answer from Janet to this one, which is, it means when the app gets harder to use for her. So you all misinterpreted this. Communication is difficult. And it is when they meaningfully get more difficult.
Well, this is an interesting digital design question of feature creep, right? Like you have these complex product team that keep adding additional features. They have the need to profit and figure out new ways to sell access to the platform. And this leads to so many, Angry Birds or Mafia Family or Farmland or whatever these games that people notifications, that's an instant ban from my bubble. If I'm getting notifications from you about the games that you're playing on Facebook, you are instantly and permanently banned from my bubble until I forget and then somehow invite you back into it. But I love my bubbles, and my bubbles have served me well. The algorithm, the almighty God algorithm of Mark Zuckerberg has vastly improved my life. I don't want to admit this, but it's a reality. My home, meeting Dominic, my dog, all this I found through Facebook, and I would not have found those things otherwise. Now, did the destruction of the American political and social system wrought by Facebook and Trump make it impossible for me to live there anymore? Yes. But am I happy that I have come to Finland and I live here now? Yes, and yes, and yes. So yeah, I think that's about feature creep. And I think that there's some element of like simplicity of design and focusing on the essentials. These are design aesthetics, really, right? Like just like the aesthetics go into my algorithm. Like I wish I had more funny dogs and cats. For some reason, the algorithm thinks I want to see dancing nearly naked, nubile young women all the time. I didn't choose this. I'm not like that. I am a smart intellectual person. I am not some disgusting old man who just wants to ogle young women. But the algorithm seems to think that that's what I want. I don't know. But I'm really happy with the bubbles I've constructed.
To me, it
Go ahead, Dominic.
I'm getting Korean soap operas lately.
Douglas, you're not alone. I have the same problem.
And we love our wives.
So, any other thoughts on how the apps get harder to use?
I would just add, the more there's a company behind it that makes money, the more they become crap.
Because they push the money features, basically.
Yeah.
You get more and more ads. So Facebook now, you get more and more featured content than actually content that your friends share. I think there are ways to sort of try to calibrate it, but they have been overriding a lot of these.
I'm a huge advocate of Signal. I like Signal. I like Signal so much that all the family members have to use Signal.
they have to.
Yeah, they all have WhatsApp as well, but I only accept messages from Signal.
Yeah, there we get back to the issue of how many apps do fit on your phone if you have an old phone.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I mean, also I have contacts in my group who stopped interacting because they don't want to buy new phones, but their Android version doesn't support upgrading the apps, and so basically they disappear. And it's sad because if it's not someone in, let's say, in your immediate vicinity, your family, or someone who you really, make an effort to keep up with, then they just disappear from your life. And that's a sad thing that can happen when someone decides to dramatically stop using.
Dominic, is this with us?
In my survey, I think that the degradation of that is only happening with apps that have a company in background that needs to make money with that. As soon as it is a sponsored thing by a non-for-profit or an association or whatever, these apps are usable forever. And I like the example with Mac. A friend of mine, Slack on a Mac, couldn't use it because Slack was just saying your iOS is outdated. What did he do? He installed Linux on the Mac. And everything worked. No worries.
Okay. We have Celia wanting to talk. Yes?
Yes.
I had you written down. I knew it was your turn.
Yeah. My name is Peggy Matambo Ngobese. I'm a student of Aranya. I'm born in Swaziland, and then I'm now living in Finland. I started following permaculture from the early 2000s. I'm one of the first ones in my country to introduce permaculture. And when I was doing my diploma, I had a topic. The topic it was the future of permaculture in the changing world. Yes. like, looking and today I'm happy to be part of the digital permaculture. Yes, one thing I would like to bring to the team is that first, permaculture is a living culture, which is challenged by the evolving world. The world is evolving. And permaculture also, is not, it should fit also in the evolving world, like the digital permaculture that today we're talking about. We like it or we don't like it, digital permaculture, it is here to stay. Yes, all these tools and gadgets and machines and everything, technology, that's why we are using. Is advocated in permaculture in one of the advocates, appropriate use of technology. Appropriate use, and most of the permaculturists that we started with in the 90s, most of them, they were against us using cell phones. They were against having computers. They were against all this digital world. And then I brought that topic really with permaculture in the evolving world so that we can critically look into it. How can we influence people there really, to take the good side of the digital world, at the same time to be able to filter the bad side, because there are the pros and cons of the digital permaculture in this digital world. I was thinking really, how can we, as a group like this, how can we profile the digital, the digital permaculture in a positive way, while at the same time we highlight the digital permaculture, the negatives at the same time? Because when talking of permaculture, digital permaculture, many people, they got lost. Really, where are we taking permaculture to? Because people think that permaculture is all about working the land. It's against technology. It's against, yes, it's against everything. Whereas, we like it or not, the digital permaculture is here. It is here to stay. I'm happy when we're discussing about with Dominik last year during his PTC. We discussed a lot the issue of digital really and technology. How can we accept people? How can we help people really accept the challenges of the time we are living in? We talk of the YouTube, internet. For me, I think those are the tools really that are there. They've helped me connect with all of you. But the challenge is, how can we reduce the addictions? How can we make sure that people, they go outside and touch the soil and eat the soil, than always, most of the time, pressing the buttons in the computers and reading, from the digital library? For me, I'm not against, I'm in support of the permaculture, but of the digital permaculture, what I'm calling for is the profiling of all the herbs and the positive or in the digital world that we can package together, bring into the permaculture cyclist for further discussion, for further clarification, and for further really choices, so that we can choose the best, what can work for us as people really who are into permaculture. What are the herbs that are ethically, that share the same ethics with permaculture? And then from there we consolidate and harness, and then from there we promote those tools to the people. Thank you so much.
Okay. You want to add something to that?
I think we want to figure out how to make the permaculture experience of life and the natural world as appealing to people. We want to use the digital technologies to entice people away from just pressing buttons and scrolling, right? We can use digital content and digital tools to help people get access to and explore their worlds beyond just the interface and the tools. I think that, it's not up to me to tell somebody, okay, I don't like that you're addicted to playing that farm game on your phone versus actually going out and interacting with nature in some positive way. I don't want to try to be a moral or aesthetic police about that, but I want to make that other world more enticing and more addictive and more interesting, and give people the sense through design, the principles of design and interaction, meaning that you have the right to actually interact with and affect your environment in what you feel are positive ways. So I think I think we want to substitute addictions. We want to redirect people away from, the ways that we see as being harmful. And we want to learn from each other of which ways might be better and more interesting. I am sure there is a lot that I can learn from how agriculture has been practiced in Swaziland. Through talking to you, that I can learn things from that. And I think this has to go back to our how the digital has disrupted our zone concept, because your experience is in your zone 0, and now the fact that we all have multiple zones, many of us have multiple zone 0s. My zone 0, your zone 0 is now in Finland. It used to be in Swaziland. Who knows where you've been? Who knows where you're going to go next? We now are transnational by nature, and the digital makes it even more so. So I think that permaculture has always tried to use technology as a tool, but technology and the digital realm are now also recognized and acknowledged as part of our evolving environment. As you say, these are evolutionary processes that we're involved in. And where permaculture is a little bit strange, it says we want to be like gods. We want to come in and we want to direct the flow of evolution. We want to work with it, but we also want to impose our stamp on it as designers and creators, as the Christian tradition says. The Creator created us in His image, they say. Well, the favorite part of that I like is that He created us in His image, and He designed us in His image as creators and designers. But I believe that we have to embrace a notion of community creation, community design, inclusive design. We have to disrupt this idea of the genius individual permaculturalist who's going to impose his design on his realm and make everybody else. No, we need to upset those hierarchies and allow different voices into the conversation. And to me, this is what the digital realm has opened up for me, the ability to talk to such a huge diversity of people. Yes, and to choose my new different bubbles. I still have my bubbles, but I'm pushing my bubbles into areas they've never been before, and meeting people and hearing from people that I can learn from, and it's to the collective benefit of us all.
Okay, Dominik, Aimee.
I really I like to read your design. Really, it's interesting that you already thought kind of like years back about that. I wouldn't have thought about it. Permaculture was something I wouldn't know. So I'm answering to Becky, not to you, Douglas. Sorry. Thanks for doing that. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for digital permaculture. I think there's a lot more people interested in it now, and maybe we'll see a few also interesting permaculture designs from future students and diploma students and so on. So yeah, it's really exciting, and hopefully we'll have more of these, let's say, chats this year. But yeah, it will be really interesting. I'm excited to see what the future brings.
Okay, anything to add to this part of the conversation? Because I have some questions, but it's repeating Lumnia and Janet.
I just like to add, for advertisement reasons, I'm writing the book about digital permaculture. So I'm 300 pages in, and Douglas has now the 3rd iteration and probably will slap it in my face again. So yeah, it's just some months out.
Okay. I know your name is not Silja, but I didn't make it. Do you want to say anything else?
One thing I can say is to compliment what Douglas have said about the inclusivity, to be inclusive in our design community, because most of our design, as permaculture has been individually designed. I've noticed that also, yes, on my design back in Swaziland, I'm designing my own garden and space. Most of it is, is based of what I did before my own design. And sometimes we quarrel a lot with Celia, based on my design, and each of inclusive, really, it helps a lot. How do we involve your neighbor? How do you know how to involve the children at home so that it cannot be just the men doing all the design, but the children be involved, the wife be involved, everyone be involved also, in that design process. Thank you so much also on bringing that, Douglas. I truly, stuck in my mind because we've been fighting last week with Celia on my designs, really. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to add another advertisement. Sorry, it's for next week. Next week we will have Katie Shepherd from the UK, and she will be actually talking about how to make permaculture more inclusive.
Okay.
And just to amplify that inclusion and how to make this inclusion work, yes, we have to talk with our families, our communities, but also how do we include into our conversation, our design, the perspective of entities without voices. So all the animate entities in our area, right? All of the inanimate entities, right? We have to learn to say, okay, I can respect and I can appreciate these living entities in my realm and all the inanimate and animate entities in the realm. And I have to, if they can't have a voice, because they don't have voices, how can I bring their voices and in their perspectives and a value of the dignity of the other living and non-living entities into this conversation? I need to make space for that and step outside of my perspective and try to open myself up for the opportunity to listen to those voiceless entities in my environment as well.
Okay, it's really interesting. Okay, you want to answer? I see you. Last one, please, because we're getting a bit off track from digital permaculture.
Yeah, I wanted to say that this brings my mind the monkeys. We have vervet monkeys, and they don't have a voice, so we should discuss with them why are they coming to the garden and stealing and eating and destroying it.
I think it's some of the silent voices, like the voiceless, really, it is all about understanding their behavior. Once you understand, how those, the voiceless behave, how they act, it is easy, to include them in the design based on their action and everyday behavior. I end there. I take it back to Kathy to continue with our topic, the digital permaculture.
We get back to the digital. So I have another question from Lumia. I will just encourage everybody else if there's any other questions here. So I will take Celia out. Sorry for putting you up so late. And yeah, here's a question from Lumia. Where do I start on my digital permaculture journey? Any concrete advice?
Start with a survey. Observe. I know it's a cliche, and that's the first principle, but really this is where you start, just make a list of all the tools you're using and just be aware of them and see where that takes you, because that's really the first step.
Yeah, and it's important for us to think about and really hard, and I think a very open question about the life cycle of the e-technologies that we're using, what's happening with these devices as they become outmoded. Because one of the things that I stumbled across while preparing for this was the idea of digital rot, because we talk about the digital as being this place of infinitely replicable, permanently stored things, but even the digital realm is not permanent. Things fall apart, and the law of entropy exists in the digital realm as well. So this leads to, the need for redundant backup and redundant copies and things like that.
Yes.
Are you frozen or no? You say you just stopped.
My brain is frozen. My screen is working, but my brain is frozen.
Good. So I have two questions from Janne. One I understand, the other one I'm a little bit doubtful about, if I understand it right. Just to make it the last question, I will share both, and then we see what you do with them. They go a bit in different directions, okay? The first one is messaging apps like Messenger and WhatsApp are more used nowadays than normal text message, even though we all have like 300 free messages on the phone. Could the messages be used as a group chat? This is a fast technical question.
Do you mean text SMSs for group chat? I haven't seen it used like this, but I'm not sure if it's technically possible to send it. I think you can send the same SMS to many people, but then the reply, everyone would have to also have the same numbers to reply to. I'm not sure how that would work. It sounds complicated.
Okay, sounds complicated. Fast. I see Aranya, you wanted to talk too. Yes, so I didn't see you raise your hand physically. It was up at some point. I wasn't looking, so I will give you before the other Jana's question. Okay, she has asked several ones.
I just want to say quickly that the best place to store information, you were talking about redundancy, is in other human beings, because we have this wonderful gift that the last few years we've lost a few wonderful permaculturists, sort of people who've been pioneers, and some of whom I knew quite well, and some have written books and they've left books behind. I remember being lucky enough to meet Robert Hart, and he was in his very late years. I think he died about 6 months later, but I remember reading his visitor book and just the number of people who were inspired by him. And of course, many have gone on to promote forest, make forest gardens and so on. So I always think that the internet and digital storage might disappear. There's a fragility to that to some degree. And of course, any one of us could forget stuff or die, but the more we share this information with each other, the more we're storing that knowledge. Of course, that's for many, many years. That's how we passed on what we knew and how to do things to the next generation. And I think we just need to remember to continue to do that and not just trust the digital domain for that purpose. That's all I have to say.
I love it. That's the culture part of permaculture, is that learn how to share and learn together in community. That's what turns crazy little ideas in the head and bits on the computer into working, living knowledge and practice that's embodied and embedded in the landscape. I love it.
If you can do it without a digital tool, do it without it. That's my advice. I know it's a digital permaculture talk, but it speaks into this as well. If we can do things in person and touch with tactile, and I think that should be valued still. Not that we only think about which hard drive we need to save it to and what cloud is it on.
I second that. Yes, totally, all of it.
Okay, good. There's this last question, then we can wrap up, if it's okay. I take you off the stage, and then this is a question I'm not really sure about. So I asked, but we didn't find. So, Jan, if you have some acceleration, do you have some interesting and surprising ways to use the digital landscapes or resources to learn about these? As an example, the work of Bellingcat.
Maybe the person who made this question can clarify a little what they mean.
Yeah.
Janne, isn't Bellingcat kind of like an open source intelligence analysis organization. I believe in alternative voices and finding alternate sources of media and information. I'm even willing to work around the edges of what is viewed as legitimate political perspectives, and even willing to entertain perspectives that are not, considered standard science. I mean, in one sense, maybe permaculture was a sort of a fringe perspective at one point that's gained a certain amount of legitimacy. So I just think what it's about is promoting our sense of digital literacy and our ability to discriminate amongst information resources. And again, as always, test that information in practical application in our local context and see how useful it is for us. Part of the problem with the information society is the disinformation society, and the fact that there is a lot of, I would say, unproductive waste that's out there and bad information that's out there. And I think that if you come across something on the internet that you're really curious about, rather than just adopting it as your newfound belief and thinking that you have now found the new access to the truth and that you know something more than your neighbor because you know how things really are working, test your ideas in community, work in a community of trusted thinkers with whom you could say, wow, I just found out this really crazy information about vaccines, for example. Well, talk to people who have some knowledge and experience that, and a diverse community of people who have knowledge and experience about those matters, and share even your most wildest, radical, scariest thoughts out loud. And I think that goes a long way to help dealing with the fact that some things are kept secret and some things are just not true that are out there. I don't know, Yane, if that at all is along the realm, but my basic idea is that, it goes to my theory, my idea about conspiracy theories. The reality, the true stuff that's out there is known enough. The real threats that are out there are known enough that we don't have to think about the secret behind the scenes people pulling the strings and stuff, because we know the real entities out there in the world who we're struggling with and who are controlling our ways of working together and living together. And so we don't have to try to imagine that there's secret guys behind the guys whose faces we see. So it's not necessarily an esoteric approach, although it maybe began somewhat as a fringe, but we're trying to make these things practiced, embodied in a community, and create a social movement where this stuff is embedded, so we can learn and develop this culture of this permaculture, these ethical, principled ways of living with nature, collaborating and working with each other and with our environment.
Okay.
Well, just speaking into this a little bit, when I was living in Germany, I lived in a rural town outside of Berlin. And in the neighboring village, a few hundred meters away, there was a little eco community that lived there that followed a specific belief system based on a set of books. And there was a big disagreement between, in a little community, we had a little organic shop, which was like a little co-op. And there was a disagreement between the members of this co-op whether we should deal or allow or employ people from this community to be a part of this cooperative because of these belief systems. So we are, I think, at an age where, we're examining really where are our boundaries also as a community, and also we're using governance structures within small communities as well. I think this speaks into this a little bit. So when we came to do the decision making and examining it, we actually read the books on that were the basis of this community coming together, and we questioned the people who wanted to join us as to some statements that were clearly racist and racist, homophobic. There was some really problematic statements in these books. And when we had sufficient presence of mind to say, okay, not that we're not dealing with these people at all, we're going to question about them, to be in curiosity about these things. And I think as communities, to stay in that curiosity and to have conversations, difficult conversations sometimes with the neighbors or with other communities, this is very important into how also we conduct ourselves in the digital realm. At the moment, with the bubbles, with these algorithms that are basically pooling people together in on the same belief system, we are seeing that there's more and more echo chambers. And it's okay to be in that echo chamber if because it's comfortable. No, we are used to being comfortable and staying in that comfort. When we are, let's say, affronted or confronted or seeing something that's different, it often rubs us really the wrong way. And our reaction to this is absolutely this. So, and we see on Facebook, for example, really violent comments or insults, like things that people wouldn't do face to face in public. I mean, in the small village in Germany, yes, they do it in the car park. You have to be very careful. Because we're really sometimes violent people. But the digital realm provides a hiding. People are hiding behind their screens sometimes to behave in ways that are not acceptable or would not be acceptable in a community. I think we have to be very careful around, and this was for me surprising and interesting, and how we deal with this and what tools we're using. And so I think this is important also when we're talking about choosing digital tools, moderation, how to moderate groups and so on. And
Yeah.
Okay. I would like to wrap up. We're over time. My mind had a cross thing and said we're finishing at 1:30 when it's not. We were supposed to finish 20 minutes ago. And I just wanted to invite Douglas, Dominik, and Aimee to say a fast sentence of wrapping up this, something to take away, to keep thinking about, to put into practice, something they got out of this talk today. Short. And popcorn style here, if you know what that means.
Share, learn, don't hoard. Let your information that you have overflow, open, talk to other people, talk to different types of people. One of the people who introduced me to the treasures of the Finnish forest is an American former Marine Trump lover. I can't stand his politics, but he's taught me more about the Finnish forest and which mushrooms are edible. We agree to disagree on politics. I don't put up with the things that are very wrong that he says, but we've learned how to work together and share our love of the forest together. And I think that's a wonderful thing. His knowledge can be passed on to my people who would never talk to or meet with somebody like him. And I think that's a lesson for us all.
stay curious and stay adventurous. That's it.
Digital permaculture is a necessity, and we have a lot of work ahead of us, but we have the right tools in our hands, and we just need to keep going and practice it.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we can wrap this up now and see each other next week. I don't know, Dominik, if you want to talk a bit about the program.